أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Respected viewers, welcome to this live program to celebrate the birth of the 11th Imam. Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wassalam, who is the father of the 12th Imam. Our Imam, we have a great program lined up for you where we'll be discussing with our respected guests his life, his miracles, his knowledge, and Imam alayhi salatu wassalam's moving, or rather being arrested and then brought over to Samarra, Iraq. So inshallah we have all of this to discuss on this live program where we're celebrating this grand occasion with our respected guests. Before I introduce our respected guests, alhamdulillah, we have been blessed on Safi TV by Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wasalam themselves to be here tonight at your service to remember this great personality. You know, all of the Imams have fadail, all of the Imams have merits, but the one I find the most pleasing, or the one I find the best for Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, is that he is the father of Imam al-Hujjah. He is the father of the 12th Imam. And that itself, it's a fadila, in that within itself is a greatness, and it only belongs to the 11th Imam. So inshallah, today we'll have a discussion discussing his life and how little we actually know about Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, because usually in our programs, in our pulpits, in our conversations and programs that we hold throughout the year, a lot of time is spent on the Holy Prophet and the Ashabul Kisa, the Imam Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, the Lady of Light, Fatima Zahra, salawatullah alayhim ajma'een. But the later Imams get a little bit less focus, and therefore today inshallah we'll be spending this program with our respected guests to really dive into the life of Imam al-Askari and how interesting his life was, and how much we can learn, and how special he was to the Shia, and how the Shia were connected with him despite his very short life. So inshallah, we are grateful with our respected guests, Sheikh Muhammad al-Hilli, Samahat al-Sheikh, who needs no introduction. He is with us today, and inshallah today we'll be discussing this together. We have the honor of having you, and also we have the honor of having our respected brother Mulla Rashid, who is someone again who needs no introduction. Many of you have heard him, many of you have heard him live and maybe met him. And so inshallah we have him with us to bless us in between our conversations with nasheeds and fadail of Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wassalam. Before I begin, inshallah, I'd like to hand over to brother Mulla Rashid to begin with a little bit of recitation of the glorious Quran. Bismillah, brother.
Inshallah, I'll be reciting from Surah al-Inshiqaq, just a few ayahs from the beginning, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وحقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وأذنت لربها وحقت يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه فأما من أوتي كتابه بيمينه كتابه بيمينه فأما من أوتي كتابه بيمينه فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا وينقلب إلى أهله مسرورا صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد وآل محمد
Muhammad,
أحسن.
جزاك الله brother. May Allah
بارك
subhanahu wa
الله
ta'ala accept.
فيك.
Allah give you more tawfiq inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sheikh Al-Hilli, I'll come to you straight away. This is a conversation and feel free to jump in any time. So inshallah we want to just open up the chapter by discussing the life of Imam al-Askari by looking at his family members. Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam has an interesting family. His mother, for example, plays an interesting role in history. We know when we go for ziyarah, as you know, you have taken many groups yourself. When we go to Samarra, we stop in a place called Balad. And you have the shrine of Syed Muhammad, who is the brother of the Imam, and he has history. And so we have a lot of family members around him, Sayyid Ja'far, for example, that you find in history. At the funeral of Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, that has a story or rather historical event to itself. So just briefly, if you could outline some of the family members around him and how important they are to us to understanding Imam al-Askari alayhi salam.
أحسنتم سيدنا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My respected sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here in the remembrance of the great Imam of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam, the 13th light from the 14 lights of Ahl al-Bayt and the 11th Imam. What is fascinating about Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, as Sayyidina you mentioned, is the fact that many people haven't necessarily heard or have perhaps expressed an interest into his mother, because the mother of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam plays a pivotal role in historical narrations.
That's right. Yeah.
Her name, according to a number of narrations, was either Hudayth or Salil. Now, there are a number of reasons why the A'imma alayhim salam gave different names to these mothers of the A'imma, mainly to conceal their identity, because the Abbasids knew exactly that there's going to be a 12th Imam and that they wanted to stop this from taking place. So they were targeting these mothers. They wanted to capture them. They wanted to stop them from giving birth, for example, or becoming pregnant. Now, what was interesting about this lady, according to historical narrations, is that she was a slave, a lady, a bondswoman, who was from the area in Africa known as Nubia or Nobia. And this was an area where, for example, Lady Fidda, salamullahi alayha, the servant of Sayyida Fatima, salamullahi alayha, was from. And a number of other mothers of the Ahl al-Bayt were also from that region as well. There are indications that she was of the darker complexion, and she was somebody whom the Ahl al-Bayt praised. So Ahl al-Bayt would not praise somebody unless they have merits and they deserve to be praised.
And this is a ma'soom praising someone,
exactly,
which holds value.
Much value. Yeah. Otherwise, it's if people consider that a ma'soom would say something about individuals just for the sake of them being their mother or their, for example, sister, it doesn't happen. Because these individuals, every word they say is significant, and every word they say is in accordance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands. So Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam praises his wife, Hudayth. He says, Salil sullat min al-afat. She has been purified from all the impurities. She is an individual who is cleansed. So this praise is not something that, for example, is coincidental. What is interesting about her is the realization that, as you mentioned, she had a number of children. Majority of them were righteous. So of course the oldest of them was Syed Muhammad, known as Sab'ul Dujail. Syed Muhammad was, of course, in his 20s when he passed away or left this world, most likely martyred. As you mentioned,
Yes.
the Balad shrine is somewhere where people go, and sadly they go sometimes only to ask hajat for having children. You know,
Well, that's very famous, right? When
Yes.
you go there, that's the first thing you're told. And that's why a lot of couples come there,
yes.
and make hajat.
That's okay. That's absolutely fine. But we shouldn't limit, for example, an individual or a shrine to a particular need. You know, these are holy individuals that they will intercede with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the fulfillment of wishes. Yes, maybe at a certain time people went there and asked for children,
They were
and they
granted.
were given.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden people start believing that that's the only thing I should be asking for. To the extent that once we were going to Balad, someone looked at me and said, "Do I have to do ziyarah because I have children?" Alhamdulillah. I said, it doesn't mean that if you go for ziyarah, you have to have more children. I said, what can I ask for if I don't ask for more children? And they said, I don't want any more children. So what do I do? So people think in that restrictive manner. But of course, Sayyid Muhammad was so beloved to Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam and to Imam al-Askari, to the extent that he was so righteous and has much fada'il that the Shia believed that he would be the Imam after
Right.
Imam
yes.
al-Hadi.
So there was a little bit of confusion at that time.
It was. But he died, of course, at the
Yeah.
time of Imam al-Hadi.
That's right.
He came to visit his father in Samarra, then left on the way in Balad. He unfortunately died there. In mysterious circumstances, it's likely that he was poisoned.
Right.
Because, you see, the Abbasids thought that he was the next Imam. So they would probably want to
So it's highly
poison
likely
him.
that the Abbasids would eliminate the Alawiyin, the Hashemites, right?
In any shape or form,
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
stop the 12th Imam from being born is their objective. But this lady Hudayth, one of the things that was great about her, and I guess we have to link sometimes to our lives. There are parents today who complain that we have children that don't listen to us, have stopped praying, are not practicing. And is it our fault? Of course, there is possibly a degree of responsibility if they haven't started this tarbiyah from a young age and they're now latching on at 18, 19 and they're saying, please Maulana, help us. My son doesn't pray, or my daughter doesn't wear hijab. But Lady Hudayth and of course Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam had this challenge, and that was that they had a son who's the brother of Imam al-Askari by the name of Ja'far al-Kadhab. Ja'far al-Kadhab, as you mentioned, Sayyid, there's that famous story when it comes to praying over the body of Imam al-Askari, but there are many other crimes he committed.
Right.
Many
yes,
others.
Yeah.
For example, he wanted to kill Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. This is recorded in history, that he went to the authorities and said, there is a young baby born, come and kill him. There are narrations that he went to Al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi's Ubaydullah ibn Khaqan, his name was Wazir, and said to him, look, I want to be the Imam of the Shia. Can you give me 20,000 dinars and give me a declaration that I'm the Imam of the Shia? So this Ubaydullah ibn Khaqan said, you are a fool, anta ahmaq. We have tried for years to enforce ourselves on the Shia, but we haven't. You want to come and enforce yourself on the Shia? It's not going to happen. He also tried to kill his brother Imam al-Askari. He went against his mother, because the inheritance of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, when Imam al-Askari left this world, left the inheritance, he came and said, all of it is for me. Nothing is for my mother. He went against his mother Hudayth. And his mother came against the authorities and said, that's not part of the Islamic ruling. This was what? Ja'far. And we are told later when Lady Hudayth died, apparently year 274 after Hijrah, in the minor occultation, her body was brought to be buried next to Imam al-Askari and Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam in Samarra, in their house. Today when we go, inshallah, Allah bless all the mu'mineen, mu'minat, everyone who's watching, to be able to visit the shrine of Imam al-Askari and Imam al-Hadi in Samarra. There are great celebrations going on tonight, tomorrow, as we speak, yes, next to the shrine of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. As we know, there are riwayat that say he was born on the 8th of Rabi'u Thani, and some say on the 10th.
On the 10th.
And it's celebrated in different places and different dates,
That's
but
right.
within the 8th and the 10th is the date of celebration. So When her body was born to be buried there, Ja'far al-Kadhab said, no, I don't want my mother buried next to my father. And I don't want him next to, and I don't want her next to Imam al-Askari. So they say, the narrations say, a young man just emerged. They didn't know where he came from. And said, this is not your house. Adaruka hada. Move away. It was the same man who pushed his uncle away when it came to the prayer over the body of his father. Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. And so we recognize that this lady was so brilliant. There's one important point that I'd like to raise about her, which perhaps we may have missed in the study of these glorious individuals. And that is, Imam al-Askari alayhi salam made her his representative after his death.
For the affairs.
For the affairs of the Shia.
That's right, yeah.
So he said that she will run the affairs after I die, which is something which drew the attention of people. A female, a lady who used to be a slave, now the Shia go to her in the matters that's concerning them. They give, for example, the huquq to her, right? Now, this highlights a very interesting point. Number one, how the Imam did not hesitate, irrespective of color, irrespective of the fact that she was, for example, a slave. That doesn't matter. Number one. Number two, irrespective of the idea of the female. You know, people say today, Islam, when it comes to, for example, some positions, certain responsibilities, females are not given that. Whereas Imam alayhi salam, who's a ma'soom, chosen by Allah, designated his blessed mother to be the individual who takes the affairs of the Shia. Some ulama have said it is her who took Imam alayhi salam, the 12th Imam, to Mecca a year before the martyrdom of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. She took her young grandson. That's why the title of Hudayth, the mother of Imam al-Askari, is Al-Jadda, the grandmother. She was known as Al-Jadda because she's the grandmother of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajhu shaykh. So she looked after Imam al-Mahdi. She was given the responsibility to look after the affairs of the Muslims, of the followers of Ahlul Bayt after Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. And she was able to raise exceptional individuals and have the patience and the strength to deal with an individual like her son, Ja'far.
I think as far as I remember, she's probably the only mother who was alive at the death of her son. If you look at the Aimma, most of the mothers had passed away when the Aimma were martyred. When Imam Askari alayhi salam, when he was martyred, his mother was alive. As far as I came across this, he was the only one who died while his mother was martyred while his mother was alive. Ahsantum Sheikhna, moving forward, inshallah. As the Imam grows up, there's a beautiful tradition that I came across. As the Imam grows up, he has an encounter with the companion Bahlul, in which Bahlul sees the Holy Imam is in his young age, in his youth, standing outside with a bunch of children who are playing around him. And he notices that the Holy Imam is standing on a side, not participating, not playing. He comes forward and he says, young child, is there anything I can do for you? Do you need toys, or do you need anything you want to play with? Is there anything I can entertain you with? And then he says that I was shocked at the answer I got from him. He looked at me and he says, do you think we have been made for entertainment? Do you think we have been made for play, for lahab, for la'ab, for abatha? Do you think we've been made for no good reason? And then he says, what do you mean? He says, we have been made for ilm and ibadah. We have been made for worship. So I'm Ahlul Bayt, and we have many traditions of Ahlul Bayt, not just Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, or the other Aimma as well, from the youth, from the young age, as even before youth, childhood. You have childhood and then you have youth and then you grow older. Ahlul Bayt were different. And it's because of the divinely appointment that was given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, Imam, huwa Imam fi batni ummih. Imam is an Imam even before birth, even when he's been carried by his mother. And so you have traditions, Sheikhna, you would have come across them. For example, Rasulullah one day comes in and he sees that Lady Khadija is talking. And then he comes in and he says, oh Khadija, who do you speak with? She says, I speak with the child that I carry, Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. In the same way, one day Imam Amirul Mu'mineen comes in and he sees Fatima Zahra is speaking. And then he would say, Ya Fatima, oh Lady of Light, who do you speak with? And she says, I speak with my son Hussein. So from that indicates that the Imam is someone special. Childhood is different, their youth is different to normal children, as in they're not like normal children. They're children, but they're not like them. And that's because of that, there had to be that distinction Otherwise, all the people say, well, he was just a child just until yesterday. I saw him playing, I saw him make the same mistakes,
Absolutely.
I saw him do the same, God forbid, wrong things that other children, mischief that other children get up to. But no one could dare say that about Ahlul Bayt. No,
course.
him, he's different. Yes.
And the other thing I was going to say about this is that if you read the literature, Sunni and Shia, Islamic literature, historical books, they often comment that these individuals, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, كانوا أفضل أهل زمانهم. They were the best of the people of their time.
Of their time.
So which means from childhood, because if there was a child who would have characteristics that, God forbid, the Imams didn't have, they would not have that label to be their best. Not only when they reached the adulthood, but they were from a young age exemplars in every aspect of the way. And let's not forget, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam attained or was able to lead the Muslim Ummah as an Imam after the martyrdom of Muhammad alayhi salam. Some say age of 8 years of age, 9 years. So it is not that, child, let a child be, their child can play and do all these kind of things. It's
people
something
actually doubt. I came across a tradition, just to put a point in here. They came to Imam Rida alayhi salam and said, this young boy, this young child, and then the Imam would say, well, did Isa not speak in the cradle?
Yes.
Did Isa alayhi salam not speak as after a few hours of birth, not even a few weeks or days of birth, a few hours of birth, the Quran says he spoke. Inni Abdullah atani al-kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya. He says if Isa alayhi salam can speak in the cradle, then this is Imam Hujjatullah ala al-khalq. This is Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam. And so the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, from that moment he showed them that you may see them in childhood, but do not be deceived, do not be fooled that he's just a child. And so Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam, many of the the ulama of Baghdad would come and they would debate with him. Who, this child, this Hashimi child? And they would debate with him. And the famous tradition that a question about a Hajj, about a Muhrim was asked, and how the Imam replies to that question with probably 15 questions.
That's right.
He says first break down the
Shows
question.
the extent of the knowledge. But it's interesting also to remind the mu'mineen, mu'minat, the lovers of Imam al-Askari, the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that arguably, of course, one of the Imams that we don't know, as you mentioned, Sayyidina, much about because of two reasons. And that is, number one, the persecution that the Imam went through is Imam al-Askari, because of the years of difficulty he went through, but also his relative young age. So Imam, was the individual received the position of apparent imama at the age of 22, and he was martyred at the age of 28. 6 years.
6 years.
Only 6 years. And this 6 years he was in Surah Marra, and he himself, there are narrations that he would say to people, don't be seen with me in public. And he would pass on these, wonderful morsels of knowledge to people in secret, in private. Yet,
highlighting taqiyya.
Yes, but we still see elements and great examples from his illustrious life, stories that today are very important for everyone to perhaps understand, memorize, and keep constantly in their minds to highlight the status and the maqam of the Ahlul Bayt, because this is important. Because sometimes today, if you ask the Shia world, some of our youngsters, some of our youth, tell me a little bit about Imam al-Hadi. Tell me a little bit about Imam al-Askari. They say, can I tell you a bit about Imam Ali?
Well, this is what I mentioned, right?
Yes.
Because we're not paying enough attention to
these
the
latter Imams. They have not necessarily received the attention as they deserve, because they have a status in the eyes of Allah. And by the way, it's a bit of a debatable discussion, Sayyidina, as you know. But other than Imam Ali alayhi salam, there isn't clear evidence that any of the other Imams has a higher status than the other. So no one can come and say that, for example, Imam Zajjad alayhi salam has a high status than Imam al-Hadi, or Imam al-Askari has a high status than Imam al-Hassan. Yes, they are Imma. Yes, Amir al-Mu'mineen, there is a discussion on this.
Abu al-A'imma.
Abu al-A'imma. Yes, but the rest of the Imma are his sons.
So we have to take a break, inshallah. We have been requested for a break, inshallah. Please stay with us, and inshallah we'll continue the discussion. And then when we come up from break, inshallah, we'll hear our respected brother Mulla Rashid recite something for the Holy Imam. We'll see you after a short break. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.